Hello dear students, welcome to Bajirao Ias Academy interview guidance program. So in this lecture, we will be discussing about developing countries' contribution towards the climate finance. And the second topic that we are going to discuss as part of this lecture is United Nations has invoked Article 99 of the Charter, UN Charter Article 99. So in this context, we will discuss what does Article 99 of the UN Charter actually mean and few details about UN Charter as well as UN Security Council. So what does this UN Charter has actually mean? So first topic, if we discuss the first topic, it is about the climate finance. Okay, climate finance. Now climate finance is very important, especially for adaptation and mitigation efforts across the globe. So however, the need of climate finance is high for developing and underdeveloped countries. Okay, so therefore in this context, the developed countries are actually not providing climate finance for these developing countries and underdeveloped countries as promised. So the historic responsibility of providing climate finance is actually falls on the developed countries. However, developed countries are reluctant to provide finance to these developing countries. So in this specific context, the developing countries themselves have taken the initiative and they have been contributing enough for the climate finance, especially poor, underdeveloped and developing countries in the global south. So if we understand this news clearly, developing countries have been contributing more climate related finance than many other countries in the global north. So earlier I have already told you what constitutes global south and what constitutes global north. Okay, so if you look at all the developed countries, the western countries including US, European Union, so all those countries are considered as global north. Okay, so these are developed countries and they are considered as global north. So apart from the global north, so we have South America, Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and small island developing states in Indian Ocean. So all these countries are together considered as global south. So in this context, the developing countries such as China, India, Brazil have been providing more climate finance. So they have been providing more climate finance for the countries in the global south than the countries in the global north. So if you look at the countries in the global north, they are more developed. So the standard of living of the people is very high in those countries. So even though they have they have been historically responsible for the current climate change and global warming, so they are not able to fulfill their climate finance commitments. So based on the initiative of Overseas Development Institute, so this is called as ODI, so the analysis by carbon brief. Okay, so the analysis by the carbon brief, so it has highlights that many developing countries have been voluntarily providing finance to other countries for climate action. Okay, so if you compare the finance which is being provided by the developing countries with the finances being provided by the developed countries, developing countries have been providing finance in a more generous way to other vulnerable countries, and that will help in adoption or adaptation and mitigation efforts that can be undertaken by these countries. Okay, so as part of this climate finance, there are few countries, for example India, China and Brazil. So these are countries which are considered as developing countries. So they have been contributing more climate related finance through multilateral development banks. So for example, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Okay, so after that, Asian Development Bank. So apart from that, there's also a new development bank under the BRICS framework. So through these multilateral development banks, the developing countries have been providing climate finance to the countries, providing climate finance to many of the developing countries, that more than what the global north has been providing. So according to some estimates, China, India, Brazil, Russia are among the top 20 global climate finance providers. So even though they are the victims of climate injustice, so they are the victims of climate injustice, even though they have a huge chunk of population, vulnerable population, so primarily because of the climate change and the climate change induced disasters, so these countries still have been facing a lot of poverty and many other challenges. So they are the top 20 global finance providers. Okay, so far China has contributed around $1,236 and India has provided around $765, okay, million dollars in climate finance. Okay, so this is specifically in solidarity with many other developing countries for climate finance via multilateral development banks. So under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, so it is the responsibility of the developed countries in the global north to provide climate finance. Okay, so these all developed countries in the global north are actually placed under Annex 2 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Okay, so because these are high income countries and high income countries are actually placed in Annex 2 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Okay, so these countries are also part of they are also members of Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Okay, so this UN convention has actually been signed in the year 1992. So this was the year when Earth Summit was actually held at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Okay, so in this context, there are a few developed countries or countries which are in the global north, such as European Union, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So they are obligated to provide around 100 billion in annual climate finance to all the developing countries by 2030 as part of the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So extending up to the year 2025. So even though they have to provide $100 billion assistance to all these developing countries as part of mitigation and adaptation efforts, they still not provided this assistance. Okay, so developed nations of the global north have failed to fulfill this commitment of providing 100 billion US dollars in climate finance. Okay, so developing countries do not have the similar responsibility. Okay, so you may have come across the word that common but differentiated responsibility. Now if you understand the historic responsibility aspect, the countries in the global north are responsible for climate change. So the developing countries do not have similar responsibilities such as the countries which are in the global north. But these developing countries actually encourage they are contributing voluntary climate finance under the Paris Agreement. So they are contributing more generously than majority of the developed countries. Those developed countries are actually known for their climate hypocrisy. So countries are negotiating new climate finance target post 2022, especially after the pandemic. So they plan to replace $100 billion of assistance which is already committed by all the developed countries, but they fail to meet those commitments. Okay, so $100 billion goal, and developed nations are making efforts to expand the list of contributions, right? So they wanted to replace and replan this contribution of $100 billion because in order to meet the adaptation and mitigation requirements, the $100 billion is not required, and there should be a more strict commitments from all the developed countries. So they have to contribute in order to meet the necessary climate finance needs. So that is where the developing countries can be able to develop enough capacities to deal with climate change and its negative impacts. So that's all about this topic. And the next topic that we are going to discuss is about Article 99 of the UN Charter. So in the beginning of this lecture, I have already briefly told you what does Article 99 of the UN Charter is actually, right? So before discussing this in a detailed manner, so we all know about the Hamas and Israel conflict. So amid Israel's ongoing military attacks on Gaza Strip, Okay, so you have to locate the location of Gaza Strip, West Bank, and what is Hamas, what is Haiti, and where they are located. So you have to understand all those things. So Israel's ongoing military attacks on Gaza Strip, uh, United Nations has invoked Article 99 of the UN Charter. Okay, so UN has imposed Article 99 of the UN Charter, so in a bid to establish a ceasefire. Now in this context, we have to understand what does Article 99 of the UN Charter actually means. So in fact, so this was invoked for the first time in a decades as Israel attacks Gaza in response to Hamas attack on Israel. So Article 99 says that Secretary General, so now he is the Secretary General of United Nations, he is Antonio Guterres. So the Secretary General may bring the attention of the Security Council any matter which is, in his opinion, may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. Now if you look at the main function, if you understand, the main function of the UN is maintenance of international peace and security. So therefore the Secretary General also have some powers with respect to the maintenance of international peace and security. Now in this context, the Secretary General may bring to the attention of the Security Council. So we will understand about the Security Council as well. So bring to the attention of the Security Council any matter which may threaten maintenance of international peace and security. Now in this context, because of the Israel attack on Gaza, the UN Secretary General has invoked Article 99 of the UN Charter. So therefore it will not threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. So in fact, this is a discretionary power of the UN Security Council Secretary General, or this is this discretionary power of UN Secretary General. Okay, so in this context, if we understand UN Security Council, earlier we talked about UNSC reforms. Okay, so UN Security Council comprises 5 permanent members, and all 5 permanent members have the veto powers. So apart from 5 permanent members, there are 10 non-permanent members. Okay, so 10 non-permanent members, and they are appointed for specific periods, so on the rotational basis. So each of these 15 countries hold the presidency for a month. The South American country Ecuador is the president. December last year, Ecuador was the president of UN Security Council. Now what is the impact when UN Secretary General has actually invoked Article 99 of the UN Charter? So the president of the UNSC, that is Ecuador, in December 2023, so it is under the obligation to call a meeting of the Security Council where all 5 permanent members and 10 non-permanent members will be part of. Now when Article 99 of the UN Charter has invoked earlier, so earlier invocations, if you look at the earlier invocations, so during the upheaval in Republic of Congo in the year 1960, so this was the first time that the Article 99 was imposed, so following the end of Belgium's colonial era. So this was the first time, and the second time also UN Charter Article 99 has been imposed by the Secretary General. So during a complaint by Tunisia in 1961 against France's naval and air forces launching an attack. So these were 2 instances where Article 99 of the UN Charter has actually been imposed. So apart from this, we have to talk about UN Charter. So what does this UN Charter actually mean? So it is a founding document, a foundational or fundamental document of the United Nations. So this document has been launched in June 1945 and it has came into force in October 1945. So you just have to remember when it was launched. Now for UPSC it is not very much of important, but if you prepare any state PSC examinations, so it is important. So it has been amended 3 times so far: 1963, 65 and 73. Okay, so far 3 times it has been amended. Now if you look at the legality of this, so it is an instrument of international law. So UN Charter is considered as an instrument of international law and UN member states are bound by it, but in practice there's a little that member countries can be forced to do. Okay, so UN is an agency as an organization which ensures international peace. So at the it is considered as ineffective body because there's lack of reforms within UN. So because of this reason, the legality of the UN Charter is also in question. So it consists of a preamble. Okay, UN Charter consists of a preamble and 111 articles, 19 chapters. Okay, so international criminal, the court of justice, so it functions in accordance with the statute of international court of justice, which is annexed by the UN Charter. So that's all. This is all about the UN Charter. For example, a UNSC resolution has been introduced. So what is the procedure in order to pass such a resolution? Okay, so in United Nations Security Council, as I have already told you, there are 5 permanent members. Okay, so there are 5 permanent members plus 10 non-permanent members. So what is the procedure to pass any resolution? For example, Article 99 of the UN Charter has been invoked. So in order to pass this Article 99, so at least 9 members of the UNSC have to pass this legislation. With the majority of 9 members, this resolution has to pass. However, in this context, if any of these 5 permanent members such as US, UK, France, China and Russia, so any of these 5 permanent members used their veto power, so this resolution will not came into effect or it will not be implemented. So it has to be agreed by all 5 permanent members along with the support of 4 other non-permanent members, then only this resolution will came into effect. So this is the difficulty in implementation of any resolution in the any resolution of the United Nations Security Council, and that is why countries like India, Japan and Germany, so these are like-minded countries, they have formed a G4 grouping and they have been demanding UN reforms. So UN reforms is a very important topic for UPSC. Okay, so this is a very important topic. Okay, so that's all about Article 99 of the UN Charter and also the United Nations Security Council. Okay, so that's all in this lecture and thank you so much. And if you really like our work, please like our video and also comment your suggestions and queries in the comment section and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.